Yeah.
Talk about the situation in the UK and define this non-crime hate incident.
I think people here find it
Jesus.
incredible because obviously you have the First Amendment in the US. We don't have a codified constitution.
It's not quite as central in the UK, freedom of speech. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
even though it's basically an English principle that the Americans adopted.
That's an understatement, but which is why a lot of us were so disturbed when in that vice presidential debate with Tim Walz and J.D. Vance, Tim Walz effectively said that hate speech wasn't covered by the First Amendment. A comment, by the way, which didn't make it to the official transcripts, I noticed. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Did it not?
It didn't, no. I think it was because he was speaking at the same time as Vance. That might be the excuse.
Right.
Chilling thing to say, though.
Yeah.
Especially when the question, who the hell defines hate, immediately exists. And the answer is the person that you least want to.
Exactly.
Always, yeah.
Well,
that's leveraged immediately.
Absolutely.
And also Walz has a lot to cover up, because it's going to come out what's been happening to these kids, and he kind of made that possible in his state.
Absolutely. But I think, I suppose to explain what happened because I don't think people in the US will understand how the police so what happened, there was a horrific murder of a black teenager called Stephen Lawrence in the early 90s. And that was racially motivated. And there was a failure among the police to take it seriously in the way that they should have done.
It was a phrase that terrified them, which was institutionally racist.
Right, exactly. So there was a report commission called the McPherson Report, which came out in 1999, which did find that there was institutional racism within the police, or there was certainly a problem within racism. That was the first time that we had a document which outlined the difference between racist incidents as being defined as criminal and non-criminal. It didn't use the phrase non-crime hate incidents, but it made this distinction, and it said that both ought to be reported. This was the recommendation of McPherson in that report. But then you have to fast forward a long time. You go forward to 2014. 2014 is the time when the College of Policing, this is the body in England and Wales which is responsible for training all police forces across England and Wales. And they are a kind of quango. They are an administrative body that effectively the government has outsourced the responsibility to train police in the law in this country. They invented this idea of non-crime hate incidents with one eye on the McPherson report. So that's the origin of it. And they decided that if anyone perceived that a non-crime had been committed, something offensive, something that hurt them, if they perceived that it had been motivated by a prejudice or hatred against one of the protected characteristics, race,
which
gender,
keeps
sex.
expanding. In Canada, it includes gender expression, which is fashion.
In UK law, it includes gender reassignment, but it's interesting that the College of Policing changed that to trans identity. So they made it up as they went along. So you had now a system implemented in UK law, implemented among the UK police, where the police were told, if anyone contacts you and says, I've been offended and I perceive it was to do with this, you record it as a non-crime hate incident against someone's name. It's on file. You don't notify the person who's being recorded as such.
It doesn't come up in a superficial search, but it can come up in a deep search, I believe.
There's a thing called a disclosure and barring service check, where if you apply for a job which is sensitive in some way, say you want to be a teacher or a carer, you have a DBS check, it will come up there. And if it is flagged there...
So that's a social credit system.
You won't get the job.
Yeah.
Like there's no headmaster or headmistress in the world who's going to see something flag and then employ you.
Zero. You're done.
So you have a situation now where members of the public with a grudge can weaponize this against anyone they like for whatever reason.
Systems of activists with grudges.
And the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, and the College of Policing have explicitly said that no evidence is required for hate to be recorded. There doesn't need to be evidence of hate. It's just solely about the perception of this. Now, this all came to a head recently because
How could that go wrong?
Oh, well, sure. By the way, I should note that this isn't just about McPherson. The chief executive of the College of Policing at the time that non-crime hate incidents were implemented in 2014 was a man called Alex Marshall, I think. He'd won the previous year Stonewall's top award in the country. He became an LGBT envoy. So in other words, he's an activist. You have high-ranking activists within the police, within the College of Policing, who are effectively dragging the police force along in their wake, often reluctantly. But the reason why this is, I think, so chilling now, and it's become a lot of people are talking about it now because it's effectively a form of pre-crime. It's effectively Philip K. Dick's idea of pre-crime. Their justification is what do they say? They say that unless we record non-crime hate incidents, we won't be able to monitor them in case they escalate into actual crime. But of course, all crime is preceded by non-crime. It cannot be any other way.
We've actually superseded you characters in the UK and Canada.
I know about this,
Bill
yes.
C-63?
Yes.
So I got to tell you about this bill. It's in second reading in the House, and I think the bloody Liberals will pass it before Trudeau gets turfed.
Right.
And so, not the TERF turf, but the other kind. Okay, so this is sandwiched in the layers of a bill that purports to protect children from online sexual abuse. Okay, so, and who could object to that, obviously, even though the bill does almost nothing to actually make that, to decrease the probability of that. I've read this like 5 times because I can't believe it's actually true. I keep thinking, I can't say this because it can't be true. But here's what I understand. I can take you in front of a provincial magistrate. And if I can convince that magistrate that you might commit a hate crime in the next year, so a non-crime hate incident.
But you might, not even that you have. You might.
I might. That I'm afraid that you might.
Yes.
If I can show that my fear is justified, whatever the hell that means, then you can have an electronic bracelet affixed to your ankle for a year. You can be confined to your house. Your communication with the outside world, including social media, can be restricted to virtually nothing. And for reasons that I really can't understand at all, you will be required to provide samples of your bodily fluids to the authorities on a regular basis, I think to determine whether you've been consuming alcohol or marijuana. Is like marijuana doesn't make you commit hate crimes. Alcohol might, but I think they probably got that from domestic abuse law, right?
Yes.
Because if you're a drunk and you're a domestic abuser, you're much more likely to reoffend. Right. But so we've surpassed the non-crime as a precursor to crime. Well, we have fear of non-crime as a precursor to crime. Can I put?
Let's have a competition then. I think you're winning at the moment.
Competition of stupidity. Canada's really in the forefront of this.
A competition of authoritarianism and stupidity.
Yeah.
I think we've got a few more cards to play in the UK. Insofar as, for instance, there have been estimates at around 250,000 non-crime hate incidents recorded against UK citizens.
At the dinner table all the time.
I think it's like 62 a day or something is the average.
Especially in the UK, because you guys are so cutting with your tongues. Yes. I mean, it's like a national sport.
Exactly. But worse than that is that the College of Policing has been instructed twice by the Home Office to stop doing this. 2 Home Secretaries in succession, Priti Patel and Suala Braverman, said to them, you can't do this anymore, issued new guidelines. Not only did they ignore the guidelines, but incidents of non-crime recording has gone up since the government has said you can't do this. In addition to that, the High Court ruled that it was effectively, they said it was it had a chilling effect on freedom of speech. The judge compared it to the Stasi, said we've never had a Gestapo in this country. They effectively said, this is not lawful. And so in other words, the College of Policing, an individual activist group that trains the police in our country, has ignored the government twice and the High Court once and has fudged the language. And now we have a Labour government that has said it wants to ramp up non-crime hate incidents. We've had Yvette Cooper saying these are really important. We need to record non-crime. Now, you might still be winning on the Canada front because we haven't got to the point where if I think you might commit a crime. Yeah. But to give a very specific example, which is why it's been written about a lot over the last few weeks, is because a journalist in the UK, Alison Pearson, Telegraph journalist, was visited on Remembrance Sunday morning by 2 police officers, and they said, we are investigating you for a crime of stirring up racial hatred. And she said, what is the complaint against me? What is the crime? We can't tell you what the crime is or what the tweet is. It was a tweet from a year ago. Yeah.
So you don't need to know the crime or the accusers, right?
She asked about the accuser and they said, it's not the accuser, it's the victim. So in other words, so we don't have due process. We don't have due process either. Yeah. Now you'll know the novel, The Trial.
There's no presumption of innocence,
right?
Because who needs that?
Exactly. But in The Trial by Kafka, the first scene is 2 police officers turning up at his house, and he says, "What have I done wrong? We cannot tell you that. You do not need to know that." This was a replay of that. Yeah. So when she describes it as Kafkaesque, she's not being hyperbolic. Right. It's straight out of the first chapter of The Trial.